Hello everyone, welcome back. The topic for this video is source criticism, so just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. We're going to have a little bit of fun today. Let's jump right into some background. Moses got water from a rock at the beginning and end of his wilderness wanderings. And there are the citations. This was apparently the origin of a Jewish legend that a rock traveled with the people. Once again, there was a rock from which the Israelites drank, and which, according to Jewish tradition, followed Israel on its wanderings. And one more, according to the exegetical tradition, the answer to the natural question of what the Israelites had done for water between those times was that the rock of Exodus 17 and Numbers 20 are one and the same. Hence, this rock must have accompanied the Israelites through their journey. So this is just some background information about how the legend of the rock that followed the Israelites through the wilderness came to be, and I'll put those sources in a pinned comment for you if you'd like to read through them further. Now let's look at the way this legend is handled in some of these texts. Sometimes it's a rock, as we just saw from these commentaries. Other times it's referred to as a movable well, since remember the rock is what gave the Israelites water, and so you can call it a rock, you can call it a well, a movable well. Let's look at a couple of texts that describe this. From Targum Pseudo-Jonathan, Israel sings a song of thanksgiving at the time that the well which had been hidden was restored to them. Spring up, and they sang to it, and it sprang up. From the desert it was given to them for a gift. It went up with them to the high mountains, and from the high mountains it went down with them to the hills surrounding all the camp of Israel, and giving them drink. From the Midrash, did not the well of Miriam accompany them in the desert and supply them with more than their fill of fish? So once again, we see the different ways that this well is referred to. Here we have the well of Miriam, it's called. Now remember that will be important later. From the Talmud, a movable well would be Miriam's well. Now you'll notice that I have left something out of this quotation, and you'll find out why later. Again, we're going to have some fun with this one. A couple from Pseudo-Philo, there's talk about a well which was brought forth and followed them, or again from Pseudo-Philo, and the water followed them in the wilderness 40 years. Now, did this legend fool Paul? No, it didn't. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, "For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them." Catch that phrase, the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. So you can see that Paul apparently alludes to this tradition, but then spiritualizes it. He uses it as a spiritual metaphor for Christ. A couple of commentaries. Since the incident of the rock which produced water marked the beginning of Israel's wilderness wanderings and happened again near the ending of their wanderings, Paul concluded that Christ accompanied them. Christ, too, was the source of supernatural water for the Corinthians. And then he cites John chapter 4 in his commentary. This is Lowry's commentary. In John chapter 4 is where Jesus is at the well with the woman, and he talks about giving her living water. Here's another commentary. Pratt notes Paul's symbolic usage as well as spiritual rock here in his commentary. Paul symbolically connected Christ and the water-giving rock. The rock was Christ. Leon Morris also notes the Jewish legend about the rock traveling with the people, but he says Paul does not refer to it. He transfers to Christ the title rock, used of Yahweh in Deuteronomy 32 and Psalm 18, a transfer that is significant for Christology. So this Jewish legend didn't fool Paul. He uses it as an opportunity for a spiritual metaphor. So it didn't fool Paul. Did it fool the church fathers? Well, no, it didn't. The story can also be read as an allegory of Christ, as the same apostle does read it, but the rock was Christ. That's from Augustine. What about Ambrose? In referring to 1 Corinthians 10, he talks about spiritual meat and the same spiritual drink. So Ambrose follows Paul's spiritual interpretation as well. Jerome uses this passage as an opportunity to talk about defeating temptations and dashing them instantly against the rock. Now the rock is Christ. So this legend didn't fool the church fathers, and it didn't fool Paul. Did it fool Muhammad? Oh yeah. Muhammad took this and ran with it. The prophet said the people of Israel used to take a bath naked, all looking at each other. The prophet Moses used to take a bath alone. They said, by Allah, nothing prevents Moses from taking a bath with us, except he has a scrotal hernia. So once Moses went out to take a bath and put his clothes over a stone, and then that stone ran away with his clothes. Moses followed that stone, saying, my clothes, old stone, my clothes, old stone, till the people of Israel saw him and said, by Allah, Moses has got no defect in his body. So Muhammad seems to have taken this legend of a rock following Israel through the wilderness to a whole different level. But is that all? No, it's not. Allah's messenger said, water is pure and nothing can make it impure. That's a curious statement. What did he mean? Well, when asked about performing ablution in a well which had all types of dirty objects in it, Allah's messenger said, indeed, water is pure. Nothing makes it impure. What could be the background here? Now, I've already suggested that the background behind the hadith where the rock takes Moses' clothes and runs off with him could be found in these Jewish legends about the rock that followed the people of Israel through the wilderness. I'm going to suggest in that context we also find the background for Muhammad's curious belief that some water could not be contaminated. If you'll remember, we looked previously at the Babylonian Talmud, and I left out a specific part of that quotation. Here's what it says. A movable well is insusceptible to uncleanliness. And that would be Miriam's well. So we see yet another connection between this legend of the rock that could run, the rock that followed the Israelites, the movable well, Miriam's well. We see another connection between that and Muhammad. Not only does it provide good background for understanding where Muhammad's legend about the rock that ran off with Moses' clothes came from, but it provides some background behind Muhammad's thoughts that some types of water could not be contaminated. That's exactly what we see here in the Babylonian Talmud. So what did legends and little girls have in common for Muhammad? Apparently, he found both of them quite irresistible.